I'm in the fifth year of my PhD. I guess for the sake of transparency, I should say that I handed in my thesis in July, and I've got my viva on Monday, and one of the examiners is Mr. Morrow, who's obviously in the room. So this is a bit of a dry run, and obviously no pressure on me. So this is the first time I've used this format, really. I also have a declaration of interest. The research, as you'll see here, is how stakeholders, the local community, amongst others, are able to influence stadium-led regeneration in their areas. And so it's a case study linked to developments in Tottenham on the right-hand side here. And I've got copies of this for people to take away. And on the left-hand side, developments in East Manchester. And so to that extent, it explains some of the differences that have gone on, and was an effort by me to reduce an 80,000 word thesis into a single page and try to make it more approachable for people. So to use in social media and draw people in as a way of getting them involved. My reason perhaps for, my original reason for doing this research was linked to my MSc, where I was looking at use of sports events and stadiums in regeneration, and looked into the Commonwealth Games Stadium in East Manchester, and that's use in trying to regenerate the area. But also linked to that seemed to be the odd idea that knocking down a swimming pool in Gorton was part of regeneration, that might be a good idea. I understand that swimming pool is now being used as a gymnasium. So there seemed to be a bit of a dichotomy there between regenerating an area and knocking things down as being part of that. When I started my research, 2010, 2011, Tottenham were putting in planning permission for a new stadium, and discussions were being developed by Manchester City about the Etihad campus. And so the two things linked together as an idea for me to do more research into this area of stadium-led regeneration. And the way that focal organisations such as the football clubs and the local councils deal with the community. And so to this end, over the last 4 years, I've used interviews, 30 interviews, attended participant observations at community meetings, planning meetings, over 30 participant observations, and a number of questionnaires to get hold of how stakeholders influence regeneration. The interviews have included police officers, local councillors, some representatives of football clubs, and a range of local residents and local businesses to get their views on what's been happening in their area. There's some strong similarities between East Manchester and Tottenham, in as much as they both have been or are areas of multiple deprivation and have been subject to deindustrialisation, both areas, and hence perhaps the use of stadium-led regeneration as being part of a way out of this. Differences perhaps in some of the geography of the area, but also that East Manchester is a decade more advanced than what's happening in Tottenham. And that comes out perhaps in some of the comments from the local community. I mean, East Manchester's development kind of started about 1999 with New Deal for Communities, and then the building of the City of Manchester Stadium for the Commonwealth Games, which opened in 2002. Tottenham Stadium application went in 2010. In 2011, we had the riots which started in Tottenham and that then made the stadium the focus of wider regeneration in the area, in a way perhaps that it has been in East Manchester. I don't think this is the theoretical background, this sort of lozenge at the bottom here, relevant to stakeholder influence. I'm not going to go into that in too much detail this afternoon, but my argument would be that those elements are relevant to both of these areas and potentially to other areas of regeneration, cultural regeneration and a wider approach to regeneration. So what it is, the two sides of this really is trying to get across the different approaches of the focal organisations to a large extent here. And what I would argue is that the focal organisations in East Manchester have taken a much more open approach, more transparent, allowed more participation by the local community, whereas in Tottenham it's been a lot more closed off. And so some of the comments you would get from people who are being interviewed in East Manchester were that they were consulted out. They'd had enough consultation. And I went along to a consultation at Beswick Library, and I think I was the only person in attendance there. And that perhaps was brought home by the fact I was asked to complete a consultation form, despite knowing where I came from and why I was there. But it perhaps indicates the fact that there was a great deal of consultation and people were allowed to participate. Also in terms of the football clubs, Manchester City hold monthly events for firstly residents and then secondly businesses on alternate months. And that allowed people who had issues with what was going on with the Etihad campus development and match day issues itself, pop concerts. It gave a forum for them to come in and raise those issues and for the club to hear those concerns and to do something about it and report back at the next meeting. So there were issues in East Manchester. It may be difficult to read here, but one of the people said that there were rumours that her house was going to be demolished. This was a kind of underlying idea that the club had a lot of power in the area. So, you know, taking over a load of land to buy the Etihad campus meant that they had a lot of power and that they worked closely with the local council. Now, the club and the council would say that was a very good thing. It's a partnership. But these forums allowed those issues to be debated and perhaps some reassurance provided. In terms of you know, match day issues, parking was always an issue. That was raised. Lack of mobile phone signals on match days. And the club and the local council were obviously able to try and deal with that. At these meetings you would have local councillors, police officers were there. And so to that extent there were contexts and triggers for people's involvement. But because there were forums for people to air those views, it didn't escalate to a large extent, not in the period that I was looking at. Now, before then, there may have been more issues, but certainly from 2011 onwards, there weren't the same strategies that I've seen in Tottenham. And you can sort of see that there were banners there. So in Tottenham, it was felt that there was a lack of engagement from the football club, from the local council, a lack of information. And so people were having demonstrations in the street. I mean, I attended a community meeting where somebody felt that they weren't being listened to. One of the ways that they might be listened to was if they went over the wall of the football club and dug up the football pitch. So you can see how these things, which to me as a researcher seemed quite interesting at the time, taking away the sort of legality of acts like that. But these are the way that things can escalate if you want, if the forums aren't available for people to do that. I mean, on a Tottenham at the time, Tottenham Hotspur Football Club, at that time, between 2011 and 2014, were quite closed off. I was able to attend one meeting with a community group with them, but nobody really wanted to be interviewed or go on the record. Whereas in East Manchester, two key individuals were happy to be interviewed about the process that was going on, and they allowed me to attend these meetings that they had with residents and local businesses. Okay, I mean there are criticisms that have been made about the campus development and even the 2002 stadium by people like David Conn and Adam Brown. But as it's more developed than the Tottenham plan, residents can also see some of the economic and social benefits, and people talk about public realm improvements the club have put in, their house prices going up. So to kind of round up, in conclusion really about how stakeholders influence stadium-led regeneration, in Manchester there has been a pathway for them to get involved there, whereas at the moment in Haringey, Tottenham, there are less routes for people to be heard, and that can lead to greater dissent. So to some extent it's in the club's and the council's own interests to allow greater participation, and there are lessons to be learnt perhaps from the way that the East Manchester development has proceeded. Okay, thank you.